Alrighties. Hello, everyone. Great to have all of you today. The name is Nat, Head of Community at Exceptional Individuals. And today we are doing a deep dive into pharmacology, looking at medication and how the body absorbs it and what the body does when it's inside the body. You might be asking yourself, what has this got to do with neurodiversity? Well, a little bit actually, because for instance, those with dyspraxia can often struggle to take medication. But probably more relevant is around ADHD. A lot of the time, ADHD medication, people wonder why it works, why it doesn't work, how long it takes to kick in, and how long it stays in the system before you need another dose. One thing I know from being on medication is that quite often when we feel good, we're meh, I'll just stop taking it. But that's a very bad thing to do. And today, hopefully with a little bit of science talky, we're going to understand why you really shouldn't just suddenly stop. Because the way the body works is it takes a while to get in the system, then it's doing its thing, and then it goes out. Also, how do we know it's even working? Some medication you can take and it's wow, straight away. Others, it takes a while to absorb into the system. Some lingers around and some goes in and out. It's an interesting subject, and I will not lie, today is a bit outside of my comfort zone, which actually makes it quite an exciting one because I really had to push myself to learn all the terms and understand the meanings. So while we may not be covering a great amount of ground today, we are going to be making sure that what we do learn, we absolutely understand what it means. That's the goal of it. Short, but hopefully quite detailed rather than a lot of information than what we normally do. Now, I am currently doing my Master's in Neuroscience, and because of that, this is where I've been learning this subject, and it's really fascinating, and I definitely wanted to share this information. Because I feel that there's a lot of information you can get online, but there's not, the stuff we're learning today is really difficult to find it in an accessible, digestible way. And I do think if you are taking medication quite often, you really should understand what is happening inside your own body. I've mentioned how this relates to neurodiversity. In general, it can also relate to any other areas in life. We're trying to create a really comprehensive view. No matter how you resonate, you have the information to make the correct decisions for you. Now, here's our team. Again, lovely bunch of people, but hopefully us by now. I do the webinars every single week, but every Wednesday we're doing a bonus webinar where it will be rotating between myself, Ruth, and Tim, and they'll be looking at more employability ones. Now, the workshop we did last week was pharmacology. Now, if you attended that, amazing. This will definitely make today a lot easier because it gave you a basic introduction, a good foundation. Essentially, it's just about medication. Today, we're taking it one step further, or maybe two or three, and we're going to be looking at the science behind taking it and what the body does with it. Does it just go on a journey? Is it relaxing? I am curious to know wherever you can find your passion or love for it. When I was younger, I used to watch a show called Ozzy and Drix, and I don't know if anyone watched it. It was a Cartoon Network show, and it was about these cell and this little pill, and they lived in the body and they operated. It was a great little show. Didn't run for long, but because of that, I've always been fascinated about what is going on in the body. How do these medications actually do stuff? I'm taking them every single day. What's actually happening? Now, let's get into the deep stuff. How do drugs work and move in the body? What is happening? There's two parts today. We're going to be learning about what happens when you put the drug in your body and what is actually happen. What do your body do to the drug? There's two little dimensions on here. Now, quite complicated again. I'm going to break it down as much as possible, but if at any point you're like, let me know and I'll happily break it down. So why do we even care about learning about what drugs do in the body and interact? What do you think? Do you think we care because we want to understand how the body handles the drug? Do we care because we want to understand how the drug affects the body? Or do we just want to figure out the right drug amounts? I mean, honestly, they're all important and they all have their own ways. So for instance, we've got to understand how the body handles a drug. If we do not know what the body's doing to it, we have no idea even if it's being useful. Is it dissolving it too quick? Is it releasing it too slow? Is it going to a different part of the body? Need to know. Then to understand how the drug affects the body. If you're taking an antidepressant, you want it to make you feel a little bit happier, or at least not sad. But if it's making your foot twitch, then you might want to take something different. Then we've got to figure out the right drug amount. Too little, not going to work. Too much, too many side effects. You want to get the right balance. But it's not as simple as you would think. It's not, all right, take 2 of these. Because if you've ever got paracetamol, nice and easy, take 1 or 2. But you've got to take it every 4 hours. Why? If you take it too soon, you'll have too much in your system. After 4 hours, your body's flushed it out, and it's probably not really doing that much. But different drugs have different tolerances, so you should always check the label. FYI, not a doctor. Please consult your doctor before making any decisions. Should have said that at the start, but just here's a nice little image which shows essentially what we're talking about today. Oral admission, not as cheeky as it sounds, literally drug in the mouth, down the tube, and the liver will do some metabolism, then the kidneys will do some filtering, there's some digesting, and by this point it gets circulated in the bloodstream, and eventually out it comes. So how long it stays in your body depends on what you're putting into your body. Now, for the first thing we're going to be talking about, pharmacokinetics. What a bloody mouthful. They normally abbreviate it as PK. To understand how you might pronounce it, Google says pharma. The way I remember it is kinetic energy, being fast, moving. So that is how I do it. I've used these little emojis because I think they're quite a useful way to remembering what each one means. Remember, person takes a drug, what happens? It's all about when the drug travels and gets broken down. Once a person has taken the drug, what happened directly then? I'm going to keep repeating what this means just because the 2 phrases that we're learning today sound a lot alike. They sound really similar. Not helpful, but there we are. So pharmacokinetics is when drugs travel and get broken down in the body, helping doctors figure out the right amount for a patient. Another way to remember it is think about pharma effect dynamics. It's about the effect that the drug has on the body, such as painkillers affecting pain receptors in the brain. Or another way, as I said, is kinetics, which means movement. In pharmacokinetics, it means about how the body moves and processes drugs. It's the drug's journey inside you. Oh, think of it like a little Amazon delivery van. Its job is to get it where it needs to be, and once it's chucked your parcel, it's your problem now. If someone steals it, not their problem. And that's essentially what it is. Now, when we're looking at pharmacokinetics, it's maths and fairness. We are looking at the mathematical equations on what is happening, what we expect to happen, and what happens after. Math models simulate pharmacokinetics by showing when we're reviewing, we're looking at what's happening and when it's happening. Are we going to be looking at absorption, distribution, metabolism, or elimination? All right, let's see what you've said. They are all correct. We are looking at the whole process, A to Z. Absorption is essentially when the drug gets to the blood system. You take the drug, it goes into the body digesting, and while it's disintegrating in your body acids, it then goes in the bloodstream and away it goes. Remember, drugs, they don't know where they're going. They're going to go everywhere until they find a receptor that they can bond with and hopefully make change. Then we've got the distribution, drugs spreading in the body. This is every time your heart is pumping, it's pushing the blood around your body. And maybe in a matter of seconds, it could fill your entire body. Sometimes maybe longer. Again, it depends. Then we've got the good old metabolism. This is the body's changing the drug's form. So think of it like taking it from one thing to another. Our body does it with food. Oh, you take a banana, or you get some vitamin C or D out of it, whatever. The body is changing it from something to something it can use, converting. And then we've got elimination. That essentially is pooping it out or anything really. It's when we want to get rid of it. Sometimes it will just disappear on its own, but sometimes it'll get diluted, etc., etc. So to reiterate, pharmacokinetics, I'll keep saying it until I remember it. The definition, what the body does to the drug. It uses maths formulas and equations. This, in theory, it's not a guessing game. We can work it out. If one person takes it, we'll be able to work out the average time the medication takes to work and how much you need in order for it to work. It forecasts the drug's journey from start to finish. That is one thing which a lot of people get wrong. When people overdose, you might take something, you're like, yeah, it's not working, I'll take another one, and then it all kicks in, and then you're dead. All right, I'm being a bit extreme here, but that is what can happen. So it's really important to know that there is some consistency. And this is why the drug process in terms of getting things approved takes so long, because you do not want to mess this up. And you've also got to take into consideration people's body size, gender, age, other factors as well. This is why you'll normally get medication just for children, because it's normally a bit of a lighter dose and normally has some sugar in to help it go down. So pharmacodynamics. This is a different approach. Pharmacodynamics is the study of how the drug interacts with the body to produce their effects. Remember, the other one is about going into the body. This one is now we're in the body. What are we doing? The way you can remember it is pharma, as in medication, effects, it is actively doing something, and dynamics is the effect that happens in the change, dynamic action. Now, which part of how drugs work within the body, pharmacodynamics, is the most important for making medication safer? When we're learning about what actually happens in the body, what is the important part that we've really got to work on in order to make medication safe? Remember, pharmacodynamics, all that means is the effect that the drug has, rather than you taking the drug. So what we got here? We've got identifying drug targets, optimizing drug dosages, predicting potential side effects, and evaluating drug interactions. All right, interesting. At number 1, we've got optimizing drug dosages. So what could we mean by that? Well, it could mean that do we need to take as many? Can we make it more effective? We've got identifying drug targets. So essentially, when medication is in the body, it has to target. It will find the receptors. Say you got a headache, it needs to find the thing in the head and connect to it and do its magic. But if it doesn't know the right targets, it's just going everywhere. And you want to make sure that it only connects to the targets that you want it to connect to and not other ones. And this is normally where side effects kick in, when it's attaching to parts which you do not intend to. Optimizing, identifying drug targets, evaluating drug interactions. Essentially, how are the two playing nicely together? Nice and simple, or potentially side effects. And predicting potential side effects is a real big one as well. Another reason why drugs take long to get approved is you have to monitor the side effects. There are side effects on all drugs, but as the old expression go, you got to know if the juice is worth the squeeze. Is their side effects worth the benefit that you get from taking them? If they are, then great. You also need to think about, well, if you're only taking medication for a short time, maybe the side effects are worth it. If you've got to take the medication for life, maybe you don't want to have that side effect every single day. So yeah, great answers, everyone. A quick recap on pharma. It's what the drug does to the body, and biochemical and psychological focus on the mechanisms of drugs' actions. This is very much focused on what the drug is doing to you rather than what you are doing to the drug. This is where we get to put the knowledge to the test. Did you miss in? Did I teach it right? If not, feel free to blame me. Which one do you think is pharmacodynamics and which one do you think is pharmacokinetics? The first one we got drug effect on the body. Then we've got body's drug actions, absorption / process. We've got predicting drug effects, varied ADHD responses, and vital for dosing, especially with dyspraxia challenges. Okay, take a moment to think about this. Oh, I'm proud. I did my job. Okay, yes, you all got them correct. Oh, I spoke too soon. I failed you all. Oh well, it's difficult, okay? Do it. In terms of the drug's effect on the body is pharmacodynamics, okay? First one is this one. Yeah, look, you're changing your answers now. I've given you the answers. Cheeky. We've got the body's drug actions, the absorption, the processing. That is pharmacokinetics. Remember, kinetics is doing something, dynamic is action. And those are the two differences here. Both are important for understanding how drugs work, which matter for your work in neurodiversity education. Now, into how these two may relate to neurodivergence is the first one, which is pharmacodynamics, is predicting drug effects varied ADHD responses. So when we are taking the medication and how it affects the body, this can be really useful for understanding ADHD medication. However, when we're looking at understanding how much dosages we need, which a lot of people with dyspraxia can struggle with, this is related to pharmacokinetics. Okay, hopefully, are you all following? More or less. There we are. Yeah, okay, that's good. And this is another really good one to mention. I'll read this little image just because I think it explains it in a really good way. Pharmacology is the study of the effects of chemicals on living tissues. Our body is living tissue. Pharmacodynamics is what the drug does to the body, where pharmacokinetics is what the body does to the drug. They sound similar, but it's important to know the difference. Now, moving on, what do we do with this information? Well, there's a handy little process called ADME, I think, or ADME. ADME. It sounds like a Scottish person jiggering around. ADME. Traditionally, it used to just be called ADME, which I always remembered it Adam because it looks like a word Adam. But recently, they added Liberation to the start of it. This is explaining the process of how medication works. It helps us understand how drugs move and work in the body. Let's take a little look at the list. Let's start with good old L, liberation. This is how the drug is released from a pill or injection. Does it go in? Does it dissolve? Is it injected into the bloodstream? How you take the drug has a big impact to how long it takes for it to distribute around the body. A worthy addition. Absorption, A, how the drug enters your bloodstream. We need to know as well. How quick does it happen? Why does it happen? All the details. Once in the bloodstream, we need the distribution. So is it going to travel around the whole body or is it going to target a particular area? And is it going to the part of the body that we actually want it to? Then we've got metabolism. Now, we always talk about metabolism when someone's, oh, you've got such good metabolism. They normally mean that you're breaking down your carbs nice and fast. But it does relate to all sorts of breaking down. Is the body converting the drug to the desired chemical in the way that we expect? Metabolism, which happens around in the center, is super important. And last, excretion. This is when you have to do your doo-doo and look at that little triangle. I guess it's a little triangle poop. It's the whole system of how medication works. So ADME is a really important concept to understand, and doctors will look at all of these when they're evaluating medication. Just to re-go over it to definitely make sure that we understand what it means. We've got an absorption going into the bloodstream, distribution, it going through the bloodstream and going to the desired area, metabolism, it getting converted into something that the body is actually able to use. And once it's done with it, discard it. That is the life cycle of a medication. Well, you might want to know, why do I have to take my medication every single day? Because every single day, your body is absorbing, it's distributing, its metabolism, and it's excreting. You need to keep replenishing it. But if you take medication too soon, then it might still be in the process. So A, absorption, how the drug gets the bloodstream, distribution, how the drug spreads through the body. Oh, April's brother's called Adam. Oh, that's an easy way to remember. What are the main benefits of using ADME for better drugs? Why do we have this helpful little way of remembering? You pick your favorite and we'll give a winner to it and we'll send the certificate in the post to it. Making drug forms work better, more effective. Ways to give a drug. If there's more effective ways of giving the drug. I don't know about you, but I was addicted to Calpol as a kid, that delightful medication that you just sit. And that was great because I refused to take pills. Ain't happening. Having different ways of taking medication, bonus. FYI, I don't condone drinking Calpol. Don't do it. Okay. Guessing how drugs will work together. So for instance, if I'm taking some antidepressants, but I'm also taking something for some arthritis, are those drugs going to be okay together, or are they going to battle it out to the death? You need to know, because people take, my mum is on 27 pills a day. She is popping them, and most of them are legal. Jokes, she only takes legal ones. And you got to think, some of them are going to work against each other, and you need to know that. We also need to make drugs safer. There's always going to be side effects, but if we can make those side effects less pronounced and not as disastrous, it's a win-win for everyone. It might just be a bit of a foggy head or something that, or a little bit drowsy. All right. Making drugs forms work better. Yay. Done on you, drug forms. So we're going to get a little bit more difficult. Not too much difficult, but just we're on the same page. Back to pharmacokinetics, the start of the journey. This is the liberation is the release of drugs from its form, the body can absorb it. This is the very first step. Pill in the mouth, injection in the arm, sign up the bum. However you take your medication, this is the start of the journey. ADME and liberation. It's the basics of pharmacokinetics, the absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. Liberation is a release of drugs from its formation, aka setting the drug free. And if this little graph here, this little bell curve, it's an important one to take. So we've got the amount of drug in the blood is on that one. Then we've got when the drug is taken. You'll notice it takes a while for the drug to be absorbed. Eventually, it is at its peak absorption. This is when it is 100% absorbed into the body. And as soon as it is completely in the body, it starts declining straight away, and then it starts eliminating. And we talk about half-lives with radiation. You also talk about it with drugs. And eventually when it's no longer in the bloodstream. This is a curve which is super important. For instance, if you take too much medication, it will clash. We are looking for this type of curve here. We want to eliminate key parameters. Healthcare professionals, your doctors, will use information about a drug or treatment's effectiveness and proper dosages to make individual patient treatment decisions. Individual is super key here. If you've ever been at home and your friends, I've got a headache, and someone's, oh yeah, I've got some prescription pills. No, because they are prescribed for that individual. They know the person's body weight, they know how their body works. We all operate different. Definitely why. You might take something, not a big deal. A kid crawls and takes it, a really big deal, because their bodies absorb and can't take as much of a high dosage. Now, when we are looking at this data, there's a few different ways that we can actually make use of it. We've got all this lovely, beautiful data. There's a thing called the compartment-based model. And this is essentially looking at the body as a whole and thinking, okay, how can we cut it up, sort it out to make sure that we know if something is actually working? The best way to think about it is lots of little rooms, compartments in your body. And this shows how the drug moves from one room to the other. If you take the drug there, you'll see first of all, it will go through the blood system, and then it will go to desired area. Now, how quick this happens tells us how often we should take medication and in what dosages. Now, there are some issues with this compartment-based model. It's a nice, simple way to understand. Body has nothing in it, body has something in it, body has nothing in it, body has something into it. Well, there are some issues. This is just a math tool in order to help us understand the process processing. So we've got, assuming drugs spread, this model assumes that drug spreads, which isn't true. Sometimes drugs will not move around. We've got ignore differences in how drugs spread in the bodies. Sometimes they rapidly, sometimes they're slower. There's so many different factors. May not show how drugs stick to proteins or gather. This means that sometimes they'll bond to the proteins nice and easy. Other times there'll be weaker bonds. This method just isn't taking any of that in consideration. It may overlook how carriers affect drugs, essentially how things take it around the body. While this is one of the best processes, one of the most commonly used processes to say whether or not someone has a drug in their system or not in a drug in their system, it doesn't tell the full story. Let's take, for example, the popo pulls you over, you're getting a drug search, and they look in your body, there's drugs in your system. It's as simple as, do you have drugs in your system or don't you have drugs in your system? But what they're not taking into consideration is how is it affecting you? Has it bonded to your proteins? It's why some people can, for instance, take a beer and be completely hammered and definitely shouldn't drive, and other people doesn't let them look they've touched or phased them at all. The same is true with prescription medication. So we want to eliminate some key parameters. We've got modeling techniques and we're looking at different aspects. We're dividing the body into different compartments. And this is just one way of looking at how we understand pharmacological and medication. The first one we've already spoken about is the one compartment model. This is your bare basic compartments, essentially before your body has had medication, then after the body. Nice and simple. It allows you to see how medication will act in the body. But when wouldn't a one-part model work for a drug action in the body? This is the basic approach to understanding if medication is doing its job, but when might it not be appropriate? We've got complex distribution. We've got slow distribution. What are we saying? Oh, yes. Slow distribution is a good one. Because if something is taking a while to distribute in your body and someone does a quick test, one compartment model, and yep, it's not in the body, test failed, but actually it's taking a while to kick in, makes a difference. I know for the medication that I'm on at the moment, for my OCD, it took 6 months before it actually started working because it took a while for it to kick in into my system and for my body to really utilize it. And had we stopped within the first few weeks, it would have been a complete waste of time. In fact, it actually has helped me. Important to know. Fast distribution, if something is distributed too quickly, then it will already start to be eliminated by the time that we're doing the first compartment test. And complex distribution, maybe there's more factors than simply not in the body, in the bloodstream, eliminated. There could be multiple steps. The one-part model may not work if the drug has complex behaviors spreading unevenly in different tissues. For instance, it might more to hard tissue, soft tissue. It will have a preference. It might bind more strongly to specific proteins, and you might only be looking at one protein, acting differently in various parts of the body. But if you're looking for how it affects the brain, but actually it's affecting your gut or intestines more, you're going to get different results. And there's also other complexities as well. So to summarize the one compartment model, it's a simple way of describing drugs in the body. And drugs spread evenly after being given through a vein. If things are being spread nice and easily, it's actually not a bad approach. But if things aren't going to plan or aren't evenly, you're going to run into some issues and you might get incorrect data. This is where the 2-part model comes up. And believe it or not, there's also a 3-part model. But the more models we have, the more complex they are, the more data we're needed. We're going to look at cocaine today because it's a good case example for how the 2-part model worked. A pharmacokinetic model divides the body into 2 compartments to predict how cocaine moves and eliminates its parameters. For instance, if we just looked at before and after, we wouldn't get a good understanding on how a drug such as cocaine is working. But here, we'll look about how it goes through the tissue and through the bloodstream and how it is on the body. We're looking at different stages in the journey. And this gives us way more information and far more accurate. If we did drug tests that we only took one compartment into consideration, we'd probably be getting a lot of people into trouble or not in trouble who otherwise should be. Let's have a little look at the 2 compartment models. Which one should we use, when and where? Both have their advantages, but at the right time. Pro implies it's easy to understand. What model do you reckon is the easiest to understand? Yes, it is the one compartment model. Nice and simple. There's either drugs in your body or they're drugs not in your body. They're either working or they're not working. Next one, pro. Better reflects how drugs move. That is a 2 compartment model. It is way more accurate. It will tell you what part of the body is it distributing, how fast is it getting to somewhere. It gives you a far more 3-dimensional and realistic view on what's happening in your body. The cons, however, might not match real body complexity. On the first one, yeah, it gives you a good overview, but it's too black and white. If we are using this information for real world implications to either help someone or to throw the book at someone, we could be doing it unfairly. And cons for the 2-compartment model is it is more complex, it does require more data, and of course, more money. All important factors to take into consideration. Let's look at some pharmacokinetic terms. There are a lot of terms that I've not mentioned which need a little bit of explaining because they're complicated, or at least they sound complicated. They're not really complicated when you get into it. Just a quick little recap. What do you all remember? When we're looking at the process, I want you to order what happens first, what happens second, what happens third, and what happens fourth. I'm hoping you'll get this, to be honest, because just remember April's brother. Okay, absorption, distribution, metabolism, elimination, correctamundo. Well done, everyone. You've done a great job. Yeah, this is the process of how drugs go through the body, and if something's working or not working, you'd want to be looking at every stage of the journey. Is it being absorbed correctly? Is it distributing through the body how you'd imagine? Is the body doing its conversion? And is it getting eliminated at the right time, too soon, too late? Oh, this is a good way to remember the process by using my brother's name. Yeah. I always find if you can find something that works for you. For me, I always just remember kinetic as in fast and dynamic as in action. But whatever works for you, and for this process, definitely. While we are going to, let's take it up a notch and look at bioavailability. It sounds complicated. It's not really. We've already shown you that little bell curve. And you always see this represented as an F. F for fancy. It's a fancy term for how much drug gets in. A lot of the time we'll take something and a lot of it will just not get used, will get wasted. It's why, if you ever wondered, if you're eating an apple and apples are meant to be healthy for you, why do I still need to go to the loo? It's because your body doesn't use everything, it dumps a lot of it. And the body does the exact same thing with medication. So think of it like a percentage. Is 100% of the drug getting utilized by the body and into the bloodstream, or does only 50% of the drug? We're not just looking at dosages here. You might have a pill, and okay, do I need a higher dose? But then you've also got to factor in how much of that pill is the body actually absorbing, because a lot of it will just get lost or wasted. It helps us understand how effective a drug actually is. If your body is only absorbing, say, 10% of a pill, it's not a very good pill, and it's also going to be more money because you're essentially just wasting it. You want it to actually do its job. And these are little graphs where you can see as well. There are some Bolus IV injections. These are injections which get into your blood system straight away. They literally, the second you've been injected, it is there, it's around your body. For instance, there would be no need for the 2-compartment model. No point. Because it's in the body, injected in the body, it's in the body. So there are some that do work that. There's many different varieties. And here are some key concepts which are worth noting about. First of all, you've got your absorption. This is when things are absorbed into the plasma. For simplicity, we've been saying blood, but actually we're talking about plasma, which the goo or the bloody type things inside you. That is what we're actually looking at. Then we've got to understand intravenous. Yeah, this is how soon is the body actually able to use the drug? Because remember, we've got to do that converting. The body can't use it straight away sometimes. Then we've got understanding how it is administered, normally through the mouth. And the plasma concentration. When we're looking at here about how the absorption is, we're essentially looking at the plasma. So has it been absorbed? Is it being utilized? And when is it finally eliminated? You'll notice that in terms of the time it takes to absorb, it takes longer for it to eventually get reduced from the body. But there's a little bit of a curve there. And some more key concepts to get the old brain thinking. Yeah, therapeutic range and toxic effects. For example, methadone. It could be toxic to you. Some medications can be toxic. What they say, too much of a good thing is bad for you, or sometimes too much of a bad thing is really bad for you. You also want to know how something affects you and how much the body can take. We all know that the liver is top-notch, filtering out those bad chemicals, but if we give it too much at once, it can overload it, and it crashes. We've got the type of bioavailability, looking at the absolute and relative absorption, comparative, first pass metabolism. This is understanding the impact on drugs. So for instance, heroin, while it let's say we've got some heroin here, it goes in the body, it gets absorbed, and then it will go around the system for a second lap. Sometimes it's not as simple as in the mouth, through the body, out the other side. Sometimes it can literally loiter around for a while. And this is a really big thing, for instance, LSD, when it takes a while for it to really kick in. If you've ever wondered, okay, you take your LSD, you wait half an hour, nothing's happened. This is because it's circling around the body a while before it starts to get absorbed and then it kicks in. That's an extreme example. But with our normal medication, it's often why they clearly say only take this amount in this given time, even if you have yet to feel any instant effects. Things take a while. And then the distribution, the reversible transfer of drugs, factoring, distributing. Just some key concepts. I can't go into too much detail today, but just see there's more to the story than what we've spoken about. And some other areas we didn't talk about is protein binding. This is when the drug attaches to different parts of your body inside, and there's different factors to contribute in there. We've also got disease states. If the body isn't operating how we'd imagine it to operate, the drug is also affected differently. The metabolism, how quick your body is able to convert. The elimination, we've talked a bit about that, but there's more to know. And the half-life, that again is how long it stays in your body and how it gets halved each time. So more areas to look at for another day. All fascinating things. I don't normally put so much text on the slide, excuse me for this, but these were important terms that I really wanted to make sure we all understood. So today, some of the things we looked at. We've looked at pharmacokinetics, understanding what the body does to drugs using maths and predictions. So this isn't a guessing game, we can actually work it out. Pharmacodynamics, this is a study of what drugs do to the body, effects and the mechanisms. Two different things, both working together. Then we've got ADME, the core process for drug processing or passage. We've got the absorption, the distribution, the metabolism, the excretion, the liberation. Remember that goes before the A. This is the drug's release for action. Then we've got modeling using maths or body divisions to estimate drug parameters. When we're looking at these different compartment models, that's essentially using a nice bit of math. But the more complicated the math is, the more accurate we're going to know. And two models that are often used is the one compartment model, which is nice and simple, and it shows if something has been well distributed throughout the body. The two compartment model talks about how it goes through the brain and the organs and in the plasma. It's essentially factoring more different parameters, much better, takes more time. We've got the absorption. This is the drug crossing the membrane into the bloodstream, often through the mouth and through the veins. Essentially got your different walls. It takes time to absorb through. I'm thinking of it like a ghost floating through a wall. It takes time, but it can do it. Then we've got the bioavailability, that fancy F, and this is the fraction of the drug in circulation after oral dose. Not all the medication is used. Some of it is just forgotten about. How much of that medication is actually being put to good use. We've got the measurement. We're looking at that lovely curve again. And from the plasma, from the absorption to the excretion and evaporation, not evaporation, but dissolve, and how instant the drug is. Lots of different facts we looked at today. A lot of information, really. And all we looked at is literally taking a pill. What does a pill do? And within those just two simple actions, there are so many different factors. Now, our next webinar is going to be taking what we've learned from the last two sessions a step further. We've learned about drugs in general. We've learned about how the body absorbs and actually uses drugs. Now we're going to look at an actual case example on depression and antidepressants. So this is a really good next webinar which follows what we've learned today. We've learned about the theory today. Now let's put it in actual practice. What do antidepressants actually do? And how do they affect the body in combating depression? And what's the difference between being depressed and having depression? So a really good one. And if you did find today interesting and you want to learn more or you want to rewatch, just go on our lovely YouTube channel and you'll be able to catch up on last week, the week before, if you want to make sure we're all on the same page for understanding depression in greater detail. And here's our lovely contact details. My name's Nat, that's nat@acceptindividuals.com if you have any follow-up questions or you want to get in contact. Nice stuff. Well done, everyone. That was a bit of a roller coaster today, and I hope you're able to follow along. But thank you so much for attending. Cool. Thanks, Fatima. Thanks. I appreciate it, everyone. Always great to see you.